The first 3 weeks of the eruption here in Hawaii, crazy things would happen in the middle of the night. A new fissure would open up and it would threaten a new neighborhood. Thousands of people were evacuated from their homes. I started the Hawaii Tracker Facebook group to help people understand what's going on and get their questions answered.
Hey, how's it going? We're live. This is Fissure 20.
We had hundreds of people all throughout the neighborhoods sending in videos, articles, and images. We spend a lot of time making sure the accurate information gets out.
This is live. Still lava moving.
They weren't just sharing a story, they were helping their neighbor. If a family was being evacuated, the group would just jump in and help out. So it was huge. They were watching out for each other.
Hello everybody, thank you for coming. Thank you for the support from everybody.
As we go through this, we're growing closer together as a community. When tragedies like this strike, you really realize how much you need each other.
Aloha everyone, I'm geologist Philip Ong. I'm here on Monday, November 28th, 11:50 a.m. to bring you guys a Mauna Loa eruption update. I'm going to try to recap a little bit for those of you guys who are just catching up on what's happening here on Hawaii Island. And a long and short is that we have an eruption at Mauna Loa Summit that began last night, 11:30 p.m. on Sunday night, 27th of November. And today, the big news as of around 7:20 this morning is that the eruption had moved into the northeast rift zone. And so that's a key piece of news because typically when an eruption moves into one of the rift zones, it stays in that rift zone and does not move to the other one, which essentially, if the pattern holds, we can then exclude the southwest rift zone and everyone in South Kona from worrying about the lava flows in their direction. So what you guys are seeing on the screen here is the thermal camera from a USGS HVO that captured the opening sequence of this eruption up at the summit. This is a camera on a north rim looking to the south. And what you can see is one of the many fissures that's opened up on the mountain today. And it's cutting across the center of the caldera. Let's see if I can highlight it for you guys. It's right there, right in there. That's that fissure right in there. You see it begins over here in the center and then puts out this big flow that spreads across the caldera floor. This is the edge of the caldera cliff right in the foreground over here. So it kind of spills out and then it slows down actually. And so we'll look at slightly longer time lapse of that here shortly. So I'm going to try to check in on the questions here after I do my intro summary. I don't have Dane with me at this particular moment because we are essentially taking shifts at this point. So I'll try to recap what's going on for get myself going here. To summarize the more recent development, lava moving into the Northeast Rift. Here are some photographs from the USGS volcanoes. This is currently on Twitter, but it's also on Facebook and on our website. What we can see here is, let's see if I can get it a little bit for you guys there, is we're looking at the Northeast Rift of Mauna Loa. The summit is off in that direction over there. So the summit's off in that direction over there. And here's a Northeast Rift, and we actually see, if I zoom it in further, perhaps, you can see that there are 3 fissures, one right there, and a little one right there. So it's just kind of that stepwise series of fissures, or a little bit offset there. And that's putting out a flow that's going down within the rift zone at the time of this photograph, down between some of these other lava flows and cones, and I can click this across and zoom it back out a little bit. So that flow is all coming from this left side of the screen, and it's flowing down to the right. So you see some old cinder cones there and there and there. That tells you that these are places that other fissures have occurred in the past. And so this is the trace of the rift zone right in here. We'll try to put this on a map for you guys shortly. But that's the big news there. Lava's flowing down this rift zone. So when it comes down out of the Northeast Rift, and it's on this north side, it's going to flow into the saddle zone right through here. And you see what's over there is mostly older lava flows of Mauna Loa. Eventually you get to the saddle road there, but it would be some time we'd expect before the lava actually reaches the saddle road. I did see a question come up whether the saddle road is actually closed. We are not seeing anything official about that, although you can expect that at some point that may actually happen. Not so much because of a danger for the road itself, but they probably want to preserve public safety by restricting access up there. That's the most likely thing. So obviously, if anyone parks on a saddle and starts walking across the lava, there's all kinds of hazards and possible pit. The county wants to avoid having to perform rescues at the same time as doing all the other response that they have to do. So that's the overall big picture summary here. You saw the eruption at the summit. You saw this flow that's coming down in Northeast Rift. To make sure we do this properly, we're going to step through the USGS alerts that were issued. The first one was issued last night at 11:45 p.m. Hawaiian Standard Time, because 15 minutes prior, 11:30 p.m., an eruption began in Moku Aveoveo. And that's what we just showed you guys on that thermal camera there. There were earthquakes that began about an hour before that, and so there actually was some chatter, and there was a post on Hawaii Tracker about the increased earthquake activity, but it really ramped up from that kind of background earthquakes all the way up into an eruption pretty quick. And that was kind of triggered by a 4-pointer earthquake at the summit shallow. We'll cover that here towards the end as well. But first, we want to stick with the actual implications of where the lava is and where it's going, and then we'll jump into some of the monitoring science of it. So in any case, as of last night, lava flows are all contained within the summit area and not threatening downslope communities. Wind may carry volcanic gas and possibly fine ash and Pele's hairs downwind. Residents at risk should review preparedness and refer to Hawaii County Civil Defense for further. Last night, they say, based on past events, the early stages of Mauna Loa eruption can be very dynamic, and the location and advance of lava flows can change rapidly. If the eruption remains in Moku Aveoveo, lava flows will most likely be confined within the caldera walls. However, if the eruptive vents migrate outside its walls, lava flows may move rapidly downslope, and that's what we've come to see develop. So HVO is in close consultation with emergency management partners and will be monitoring the volcano closely to provide further activities. As soon as possible, HVO will conduct aerial reconnaissance to better describe eruption and assess hazards. That's the pictures I showed you guys just a minute ago. So that was the first update we had last night. There was another one released at 2:43 a.m. That's what 3 hours following. And that was a status report. And this was prompted because many people on the Kona side of the island especially were looking towards the mountain and seeing the flow outside of the actual caldera flowing downhill at high elevations And we're not quite sure exactly how high those flows on the Kona side came down, but it seems like that was part of the initial opening phase of the volcano, of that eruption, something that was repeated in from 1984 and previous eruptions as well. We'll show you guys some of those maps. And so we'll have to wait for all the imagery to come in to really map out where everything is. But it seems like the action now is in the northeast rift and not in that upper southwest rift area outside the summit. In any case, this was issued because they wanted to make sure that people knew that lava flows visible from Kona were in a summit region there. And there was currently, at the time, no indication of migration of eruption into any rift zone. Of course, we're at alert level warning and aviation color code red. We've seen this be something that the news has focused on, potential ash going into the air. Although most Mauna Loa eruptions don't put out that much ash, and it's really not a primary hazard as you'd expect it to be other volcanoes around the world. So there is a lot of gas coming out as well. That's going to affect not just Hawaii Island, but the entire state. Given the volume that's coming out, we'll look at that as well. But continuing to step through the official notices here, there was one issued at 7:20 this morning, and this is a key one. That's the most recent breaking news for us. At that point, it was stated, the eruption of Mauna Loa has migrated from the summit to the northeast rift zone where fissures are feeding several lava flows. HVO staff in an overflight at approximately 6:30 a.m. confirmed fissures at high elevations within Hawaii Volcanoes National Park are feeding lava flows upslope of the Mauna Loa Weather Observatory. Lava flows are not threatening downslope communities, and all indications are the eruption will remain in the northeast rift zone. Volcanic gas and possibly fine ash and paleous halos may be carried downwind. Residents at risk should be preparedness. And once again, based on past events, the early stages of Mauna Loa rift zone eruption can be very dynamic. The location and advance of flows can change rapidly. So one thing we'll do is we'll look at the 1984 eruption, which is in a fairly similar location. We'll have to see how this eruption develops, but looking at that might give some of you guys some expectation of what comes next. So let me move through here, and I hope to not take too long and be able to summarize this, but let's go to Hawaii County. Hawaii County at the very top of their page, right up there, is saying Mauna Loa is erupting. Lava has exited the summit and can be seen on the northeast flank. It does not pose a threat to any communities at this time. As a precaution, shelters have been opened at Kikua Kalani Gym at Kailua Park, Old A's in Kona, and Robert Herkes Gym in Pahala, Ka'u Gym. So they're opening these shelters in case anyone feels compelled to self-evacuate. There are no evacuation notices. As far as we've heard, all the schools are open. The development of the lava moving to the northeast rift means it's in an area that's going to go towards no people, no habitation. And if it does eventually get there towards in a direction of Hilo, it's expected to take weeks to months, more likely months to make that advance. So it has a chance to stall before getting that far, as it did in '84, and that's kind of the current paradigm we'll have to examine there. But that is the Hawaii County alerts there. Let me just reload it to make sure nothing has changed, and let's look at the front page here. Advance to the next one, and that's looking at if you click through to the civil defense, there's that statement repeated again. You can come down here and click on this volcano hazards icon, and that will take you to the volcano hazards page on the County of Hawaii. And this is somewhere else you can continue to get information. And you'll see that Hawaii County has made a graphic out of the USGS update, 7:20 a.m., and stating the same things here, right? The eruption has migrated into from the summit to the northeast rift zone. Fissures are feeding several lava flows. Lava flows are not threatening downslope communities. All indications are the eruption will remain in the northeast rift zone. So that's a big sigh of relief for everyone on a Kona side, South Kona, Ocean View, all those areas. And as a precaution, the gyms are open there. So that's the long and the short of it. So that is the civil defense. Let's see here what else I can. All right. If you continue down on that page, what you'll find is there's this Know Your IZ is inundation zone, and this is the map put together by the USGS. And so I thought I'd just focus on this real quick here, just to show you that this is the area we believe the lava is coming out, is somewhere in here, more or less. And it's flowing down towards the saddle. It's more likely to go that way. Right now, it's staying within this zone. It's somewhere in here, the last photographs we saw. You'd expect at some point it's going to leave the rift zone and start progressing down the saddle in that direction like that. Now, of course, it's a long fissure line, so you could have multiple exit points there, or here. And really, this dividing line right here is what determines whether that flow, when it hits the saddle, goes to the east, or whether eventually it cuts to the west. Right? So that's still a minor detail that we haven't quite seen the result for there. But we do believe that lava flow is up in this area, the national park, and flowing in that north direction right in there. So just a second here. Oh, sorry guys, I got phone calls coming in. We have a report from Ikeka Marzo that there is a fissure up at 11,000 feet on that southwest side as well. So we'll be looking for information on that as well coming up. But that is up. Let's see if I can scroll this map down. That could be something up in this upper area over here, somewhere in there as well. And so this is all that summit region. Let's keep moving forward, and I'll come back to this here. But just to recap, there is that USGS Volcanoes Twitter. Let's make sure there's nothing new that's come out that I'd like to share with you guys that's breaking. And see the VOG dispersion model has been updated to include Mauna Loa, so we have seen that. HVO field crews are at Mauna Loa's northeast rift to make observations and collect data. There is that image of that. That little more on a screen for you guys. So there's a scientist in front of that big flow. You guys can see the red all the way up to here, all the way down to there. This is that big flow right there, all this stuff right here, size of the flow. This perspective. And there they are, probably mapping things like advance rates and trying to get volumes, because that's a key variable to trying to anticipate where that flow may actually go. So let me close that and keep moving through. The USGS has email service, notification service, and you can see all the different entries. So it did mention the Weather Observatory as being potentially in the path, and we've heard clarification, not so much the Weather Observatory itself, but the access road to get there may be more in threat. And in fact, here is at Keeling Curve, the Weather Observatory Twitter page, and they state that lava from the ongoing eruption of Mauna Loa is flowing close to the observatory. It's likely that the road or power lines to the site will be impacted soon, shutting down the instrument. So that'll shut down the ppm, CO2, and the air measurements that have been done there at the Weather Observatory for some time, right? That's the data source for all the work in the ozone hole and all of that. So they're going to have to pause their data collection. So that's the big picture there. Let's move into the webcams and look at what's happening right now, what we can see right now at this minute. And there's our summit webcam. You don't see a whole lot because it's the daytime. There is hot lava in there that would probably be glowing at night. It doesn't seem to be really adding a whole lot of volume in this area right now. It seems to have migrated down to those upper areas there. So there's our thermal camera that's showing a little bit more of what areas are hot. And I need to pause just one more second again. All right, sorry about that, you guys. Phone keeps ringing, of course. And we are gonna, at some point in a little while, get Mayor Roth and Dr. Ken Han back on for another briefing as far as what's happening and update on this eruption as well. So we'll finish our summary here to make sure everyone is caught up first. There is a most recent thermal image showing that it's hot, obviously, but you don't see as much change in color. There's no yellows in here. That's showing the hotter lava coming out. So that flooded out, and it seems to have slowed down within this field of view of the camera, right? And this camera is only looking at one small part of the summit caldera, and there's stuff happening, it looks like, on either side of it off camera. But scrolling over, we can see the MO camera here from the south rim. Unfortunately, is not updating on the last images from October, so we can't really look at that one. South pit, similarly, last in October, we can't really use that one. So we can come back down here to Mauna Kea and look across, and the flow is on Mauna Loa across the saddle there, or from down in Kilauea, you see there's a whole bunch of clouds and weather coming through. So Southwest Rift camera, you don't see a whole lot here, right? If there is another fissure up in that upper reaches, maybe it's right in there. I see a little bit of gas, perhaps, but it looks like it's way up there, and we'll have to await more information on that and look at the video that's come up not too long. And then upper Southwest Rift here, nothing showing in an M3 camera. That's our survey of what's on the HVO webpage for Mauna Loa webcams that are locally available. Okay, so the whole sequence up at the summit. This is a little bit longer version than I showed you guys at the start from the USGS, so you can see how that burst comes out and stalls out, and you see essentially cooling off. And maybe let's see if I can change my playback speed. Let's slow it down for you guys here. And right in there, that's the fissure line right in the middle. See, it begins right in here and then essentially starts spreading over in that direction, starts propagating across. You can see the fissure line. I might have to pause it to step through this, but so back. There's our first frame. There's a fissure right in the middle. Advance one. The edge of the fissure is over here. Advance one more. The edge of the fissure is now over here. Advance one more. Still right there, looks like. Still right there. And then now it looks like it actually propagates off the screen to the left there. So the fissure is can be a long feature that goes off camera, and then the lava can come out that part of the fissure over there, and this one can stop erupting. Which may be a possibility of what's actually happened. We'll wait more. Play it through for you guys one more time. And there it goes. And in comparison to the USGS version, it comes in a little bit slower, so this is covering less time at a slower pace. So you see more of how it actually slows down. Right? It comes out and spreads across. That fissure propagating across, and then the flow stalls out here at the edge and kind of hardens going back towards the source there. That's the USGS version. Show you guys one more. This is the visible camera version. See that fissure line propagating across. You see the sun come up, and then in the daytime you see that we lose the glow. Still in there and hot as we saw in thermal, but the camera evidence there. It's not. You see that gas and fume coming out along the fissure line. Hopefully this is a good view perspective of that fissure line opening up and unzipping across both directions. You can see a little bit easier on here. That is the ML camera. Okay, so gone through, go to, let's see if by chance there's a map, and let's talk. So this is a map page from Mauna Loa. Just to give them a chance to post it. I'm sure they're working on this, but it's not no map posted yet. So let's go to this map. This is the map that USGS refers to for the response times of each eruption. The reason why we're so worried about anything in Kona is because of the short response time that we have lava to the ocean there, and the high flux rates that we have when lava goes through that part of the rift zone, and usually comes out in higher volumes than it does in the Northeast Rift. Northeast Rift eruptions usually come out at half the volume of Southwest Rift eruptions. So that's promising. And then the other factor is when flows come into this blue zone over here towards Hilo, they hit this flat spot in the saddle and they spread out and fan out. And as Frank Truesdell likes to say, it's a divide and conquer from that point on. Once the flows hit that flat spot, they like to jump out of their banks and split and make secondary flows and tertiary flows and on and on and on. And the more your flow gets split up, the less it can advance forward. And that ultimately might be what keeps the flow out of Hilo. In 84, the eruption lasted not quite 3 weeks, but a little less than 3 weeks, and did not get all the way to Hilo because of that dividing and conquering pattern, right? The last eruption that got to Hilo took 280 days, and so you're looking at many months of it working its way down and inching and breaking and dividing. So that is a much more reasonable length of time for us to prepare and adjust to what's happening in the volcano than what you worry about in the South corner. So we're really cautiously optimistic that the pattern will hold and the lava going into the Northeast Rift will remain in the Northeast Rift. And not to say that anyone else should be unprepared, but odds are favorable that Kona is off the hook for this eruption in Mauna Loa. That's really the bottom line. I'll update and try to make sure that that message is coming out. So that's the current map there. Let me advance and keep going here, and we'll have a chance to circle back and look at some of these questions and other stuff too. But here's an area of this part of the Northeast Rift, and you see the dates of all these different flows that have erupted from this area. And I would anticipate more or less somewhere in here, and right up against the summit region. And so there's a summit caldera right there. You may see this dash red line. I'm going to draw right over it right here. That's the extent of the summit. That's that 12,000 feet, or you sometimes see a little bit higher, 12,500 feet demarcation line. That anything above that, even if it looks like it's in line with the upper parts of the rift zones, is considered part of the summit still. So when USGS says lava flows have left the summit, it's come out of beyond this red line here on this side, and that's what you see there. And the reports that we're getting now is there may be a second another fissure that's down here on this side as well, right? And that would be something that we don't expect both of those to continue at the same time as eruption goes on. It seems like lava is mostly in this area according to the USGS, but we'll have to follow up and see what's happening over here as well. Let's look at some of the imagery. So let me start this over and let's see if I can zoom in a bit. This is from Ikaika Marzo, via Ikaika Marzo, right? It's not his video. I believe it comes from helicopter pilots. And this is on the ground at Mauna Loa Summit earlier this morning, panning across, and there's the edge of the caldera right there. You see the flow is going over the edge of that upper slope and flowing down into that upper Northeast Rift Zone from. So in this case, it appears that that fissure that we saw off left screen of the thermal image, and those fissures are through here in the caldera floor. This is kind of the edge of it right there, and it seems like they're flowing out to the north and east, and actually are able to escape that low caldera wall up there, and that's one pathway out. So that's in the northeast there. Let me pause this for now, and let's go to this one. This is a video from Maunaloa Eruption on YouTube. I believe this is our associate Travis Sanders. And this is taken from Captain Cook by drone, and this is showing that upper southwest rift elevation. This was early this morning, 2 a.m. local time. So this is the flow that people in Kona were seeing coming down towards that Kona coastline. It was a long way away and really high up on a mountain. However, everyone could see it moving and changing where it was going, and that's caused quite a lot of concern. So you can see the nice zoomed in view here. Fissure behind all this gas here in the background, and you can see the edge of the flows here in the foreground. In this particular few seconds that we're showing you, you don't see it really surging forward that much, but over the course of hours, people witness this flow advancing. They feel a significant amount. So we'll be curious to see the mapping of how far this actually went down slope. I did hear some reports of vegetation burning, so that would kind of indicate that it's gone down a decent ways from that rift, from that area. So move on from that. Let's move on to, this is from Two Pineapples, who were streaming this morning from the Saddle Road. So let me just kind of skip through. This is a long video, but see that zoomed into that rift from the saddle. There you can see the actual fissure and all the gas it's producing. You can see there's like a line of fissures over here. There's a line of fissure over here. There's a little lava flow. It's starting to flow right off of the side, being fed by that fissure. And let's see if I can just kind of skip through here a little bit to give you guys some different views. And obviously you can go look up Two Pineapples on YouTube and catch this whole video if you're looking for stuff. So it was a long way away. They're zoomed way in to give us this view. Really can see those fountains dancing around in there. Really epic stuff there. And then flow over here, right off to the side. So that's the saddle view. Let me just point out right here. Okay, let's see. Zoomed in, there is that fissure. You can see the flow is starting to gather and starting to move away. Keep an eye on this area right in here. Let me advance it a little bit. There is that flow moving away from the rift zone, and it's coming towards the viewer, towards the saddle, to the north here. Right? Fountain burst there. Really cool. See that. Mahalo, Two Pineapples for. So look forward a little bit there. You can see how this is progressing. More flow. It's going further and further. They really caught that flow bursting from that upper northeast rift zone area and starting to flow down a hill throughout the course of this broadcast here. Several hours. I hope it's getting there. Zooming out, there is a flow. There's zoomed out the whole mountain. So this is really, there is a summit that's in that upper elevation. We're zoomed way in, so you really can't tell where it is compared to this, but really cool. It gets lighter. Unfortunately, some clouds come in, but you can still see sunrise fog. Keep advancing it here. This is so okay. On to the next one. There's another video from Two Pineapples as well. This is them driving up to the eruption. So from a distance, there is that summit region, and advance it a bit so you can see there's that nice glow. Sun rises, sky changes. There. This is what the mountain looked like from the saddle this morning. This is earlier on, they're running two cameras, and as the flow starts moving down, it's moving down way up there. This gives you some perspective as far as where this is, visually speaking. More open. Well, I won't look for anything. That's good. You guys get an idea of where that flow actually is. Saddle there. Let me keep going to some other videos here. So let's look at this one. Popping up. So this is video from Bruce Amori and Mick Kalber flying with Paradise helicopters. This one first. So nice videography from Mick and Bruce there into the summit. Let's play this little animation here. See those fountains in much higher definition now. From the helicopter, feeding a river of lava. That's the silvery, shiny stuff on both sides of the orange. That's the lava that's flowing downhill. It's there. Seconds for now. Well, I'm sure we'll see a lot more coming up. So you can look for those guys as well, Bruce Amori and Mick Halber helicopters. So that is one, and let's go to the other one here. Cell phone clip from Bruce Amori. There, you can see, oh, it's right there. So there is that northeast rift eruption. There is a flow that's moving, looks like it's coming down here to the southeast. It looks like there is a branch that's also moving to the southeast at that upper slope as well. And that is similar to 84 actually. When we get to the maps, I'll point that out, but get rolling here. Just going to note that flow is going both directions. That also will slow down any advance into the saddle because you're splitting the flow into two different parts here. One is going downhill to the south and one. So a really amazing footage here from Bruce Amori. Mahalo, Bruce. And yeah, this direction does eventually go to Hilo, but just to recap, that would be something that would probably take months to get there and have a chance to stall out during those months that it would take to get. So the eruption would have to last long enough and focus in one place and not break out of its channel and all those things to actually reach Hilo, which is possible. It's happened in the past, of course, but it's something that doesn't happen within hours. So it gives us some time to prepare and adapt as we go along. On the ground, rather than having to actually run and prepare just in case things are going the worst possible case. So we're no longer in a worst possible case scenario. We're in a repeat of the 84 eruption, which is obviously concerning as well, but not as bad as something in the Southwest Rift would be. Okay, so let's see. There's one more that include here, and button here. This one. Back to Ikaika. Let's click on Ikaika Marzo, and let's find this video here. There is the two lobes visible from the saddle, and bring to. What we're looking for is, here we go. New updated at just before 12. New fissure opens up in 11,000 foot elevation. Looks to be in the western part. So there is the video. Let me look there. Looks like there is. And give me just a second again, guys. All right, sorry guys. Let's see if we can get Dane to jump on here. It's ready. So, but anyways, there is that 11,000 feet upper southwest rift. That's also outside of that summit zone. If it's down at 11,000 feet, so that is obviously a development that we would like to see more about as well. So interesting to note. Up at 11,000 feet, the flows are also not going towards people. But it does kind of leave open that question of whether there could be some activation of the Southwest Rift still, or it's really settled in the Northeast Rift, or if it's still near the summit enough that it's basically chosen a side. So let's see. Let's rank. Just a second, you guys.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Let's see if I can get.
All right.
Yeah. All right, Dan, I hear you, but you're gonna give me a second to get you on the screen here.
It's all right. I just had everything crash on my computer, so not great timing. Let's.
All right, there you go. There you are. Oh,
All right.
I can't quite see here. Let's get that up.
Oh.
There we go. So, just to catch you up, I was just kind of just trying to summarize what's happened so far. And with the main development being the lava's gone to the Northeast Rift. We're going to try to keep this summary fairly short because we're going to try to get Mayor Roth and Ken Honigan ready. So let me keep going through. I've been showing different videos of the flows because we don't actually have a map yet. And it's interesting to note that this flow that Ikeka just posted at 11,000 feet on the Southwest Rift side, as well as the ones up at that upper elevations on the Northeast Rift side, seem to be both going now. We need to get some clarity on that. So let me come to one other way that we can possibly look at where this flow might be. This is very tricky. I'm pulling up the fire information for recovery management system map here. This is showing hotspots on satellite. However, this has some issues in that it may not exactly catch where the flow is. It might be reflecting off of some of that hot gas that's coming up. But it does give us a little bit of a hint of what's happening there, right? So one thing is pretty clear. There's a hole in the middle right here we can see the caldera through. So we know that the caldera got full of lava. So it looks like it's slightly misaligned a little bit there. There's a little bit of distortion or something that we have to account for as well. But one thing I was looking at here is you see all these little squares are where it's picked up a heat signature, right? But there are some areas where this is denser than others. Let me see if I can right here. This cursor, right? But right in here, it's almost all solid. So it's likely that that's catching that summit caldera area and this northeast area, right? And this is still updating. And if we look here, over here, it's more dispersed. So I'd say maybe this is more a gas reflection. But if we look at where it's actually denser, we see there's another dense spot up here in the upper Southwest Rift. And it seems to actually indicate something that will flow down in that direction, right? So we'll have to wait and see when the first map comes out, but I would not be surprised if we have a flow that came down, that one everyone saw from Kona, that actually came off from this area and flow down in a path somewhat like this. We'll wait and see what it actually looks like. And we've seen other dispersed areas like this, and maybe more of the gas coming on from the migrating fissures as they move up. So this gives us some clue, but we don't really believe that everything that's red here is lava flow. You have to be a little bit more nuanced than this because this is looking for smoke signals from wildfires more so than lava flows. Exactly. So all that being said, what I want to do real quick before we wrap it up here with the signals is actually talk about the 84 eruption very briefly here, because what's happening now is the lava flow is coming out of an area of the Northeast Rift, which is similar to 84. We'll have to, let's for now ignore that upper Southwest Rift, and we'll come back to that here. But what had happened in 84 is it had also followed a long quiet. In that case, it had been a 9-year quiet, so it's not as long as our 38-year we have right now, but a 9-year period of quiescence and 3 years of increasing activity of earthquakes that eventually led to the eruption in March of 84. So let's look at the actual sequence itself. What I want to show you guys is, let's see, is the map I have pulled up here? Yeah, so this is a sequence that the fissures opened in 84. We actually had in 84 opening up at the summit and a flow in this upper Southwest Rift area that did start going a little bit downslope, right? And it looks like we might have a bigger flow that came off that direction. It might just be a matter of where exactly the fissure opened up compared to the slope. Then you can see phase B here. It actually migrated into this upper Northeast Rift. That's similar to what we believe we're seeing right now. And then you can see the C, another one of these fissures, actually opens up and starts flowing down towards the southeast, right? This is what I said looks very similar to what we saw in a picture just a few minutes ago. So far, this is what we have. The A, B, and C seems to be a very similar pattern to what's happening from last night to today on Mauna Loa. Now, the reason I bring this up is that there actually was a further phase, and the opening of rifts, of fissures on the rift lasted another 12 hours beyond this, and you actually got these other fissures here, which are at the top of this zone marked D, and that fed flows that came over to the southeast first, then eventually focused into a spot and then started moving off towards Hilo. And this is where it actually branched off from E to jump its channel to make an F, to jump its channel to make a G. And that's how the flow split itself up and didn't actually make it to Hilo because it was in a flat spot where it kind of piles up and is able to jump its bank and breach and make a new. So this is all to say that what we're seeing now may still only be the first half of a sequence, and we really have to wait to see what happens after this, if the flow stays in this area like right here, or if it's going to further propagate into the lower elevations of that northeast rift zone. And we're talking about these meter contours, so that's 3,000, 2,000 meters here. So you're looking at somewhere in the 8,000, 9,000 foot elevation zone where the lava's coming out here, more or less. And of course, that can vary, and these fissures can be long and can traverse, let's say, a mile or more, and full range of elevations too. So that is the map of how that sequence began in 84. Let me go back to the narrative here, right? So you can see the eruption began in that case at 1:30 in the morning, a couple hours after, but still in the middle of the night, similar to what we had last night. You can see that in the northeast rift zone here, that occurred around 4 a.m. and until 4 p.m. Right? So you can see that eruption began at 1:30, and then about 2.5 hours later, that's when it did that move to the northeast rift zone. And that phase lasted another 12 hours. So that's what we would be in an analog now. If it were to be 1-to-1, of course, it's not guaranteed to be, but this is our most recent guide and giving us a suggestion that we need to not assume that the flow has found its final eruption source and vent site yet. Right? It could still be changing for the next 12 hours, we'll say. And then at the end of that 12 hours, that new fissure became the eruption's main vent, and that fissure was at 93. So that's what I was describing there. And some images from then. That's the flow that once it focused to that vent, that's what fed that flow towards Hilo. That flow kept going day after day after day. And after a few days, that flow breaks from its channel, makes a new flow. And then again, and then the rate of eruption slows, and eventually the flow stalls before actually reaching Hilo. So that's a good enough summary there. I really want to just point out that sequence because it may inform what we expect now. There is another map of that 84 eruption. I'm sorry, this is actually the 75 eruption from the 9 years before that. And so this is another point of comparison. This was a summit-only eruption, right? And we've often said that 3,500 is more or less that boundary, right, so of that summit region. And we're talking about the fissures. So in that case, we had fissures across the caldera floor here and here. But both of those fissures extended, that one extending to the northeast, put out a flow that went towards the Weather Observatory, and actually didn't affect the observatory, and it came close to cutting off the road, but actually did not reach the road. It came really, really close. And there was also one on the southwest upper section here that spilled over, and in that case it split, and it went both southwest and southeast. It filled in the south pit and blew a hole down here, a couple of those pit craters. And so you can see that when you have summit activity, it's not unusual to have upper elevation, southwest and northeast rift activation of those fissures. So the question that really is now is it going to keep moving down well outside of that summit zone in the northeast? And it seems like we'll have to wait and see. And likewise in the southwest as well. If we have a fissure that's up at 11,000, I might put it more down in here perhaps. But it's still potentially that same pattern. We'll have to wait and get some clarity on that.
Yeah.
The 84 eruption comes in pink now. The 75 is in blue. So here you can see in comparison how the 84 fissures went much further down that rift zone, and that's what makes it a rift zone eruption there, as opposed to that summit eruption category that we saw from 75. And note that in 84, even though we ended up focusing on the northeast rift ultimately, look at the size of these flows in the southwest rift also that came out. All that pink was from 84, when the magma initially moved a kilometer into the southwest rift before backing and so it started off in a summit and migrated to the southwest and migrated back to the northeast. And that seems to fit the little information we have so far as a sequence. We did have reports of lava flows up in the southwest visible from Kona. That's likely something happening over here. And now what's going on, pictures you see from the saddle from Waimea are looking at a branch coming to the north. And we just saw from the photographs a couple of these maybe starting to turn to the south a little bit. I've not seen this lower phase of fissure. That's kind of what we're waiting to develop. That could happen in 12 hours there, or we'll see if it really goes into the southwest or not, what's happening. This is an image that was published in the follow-up to 84, really pointing out how the 84 and 75 fissures were in very similar locations. This is a 1940 cone that we pointed out in the thermal. It's that high spot on the right that sticks out. All the lava surrounded this feature. It's a high spot on the cutter floor. And we saw that the fissure kind of comes almost right through that cone. So it's very similar, if not right next to that 84 fissure. It seems like it's in a very similar location there. The 75 fissure is over here, was also in a similar location. But you can see from this angle, because we're looking to the west here, how these fissures can actually across the caldera floor, cross the rim, and can erupt here on this upper part of the southwest rift. So this is a zone where it could actually, that same fissure could propagate off the camera, be outside of the caldera walls, but still be in a summit, and put a flow down that's visible from Kona in that direction. So that seems the most likely candidate for what's happening here in upper southwest. And that complements what we saw in the southeast. So more. Yeah, so one final map so that eventually those flows from 84 go all the way down to here. It's not shown on those last maps. So just so that's where we think it is. It's essentially a similar location. Not quite clear where it's going to settle, but that's what we're looking at here. And to just wrap it up with some of the data here, earthquakes on Mauna Loa are still ongoing. That's what the red ones are here in the last hour, I believe. The last hour. And all the orange ones are the ones that came up earlier, right? So not huge numbers. There was one big one. If I scroll back in time, you can see that last night, I mentioned it was around 10:30 or so. There was that beginning sequence. Where is that? Down in here. Right in here. So starting to get shallow earthquakes. We start with a few 2s, get up to a 3, and really when you get to this 4.2 at 10:56 p.m., essentially at the surface, that's the one that broke the camel's back there. That's the one that opened that pathway, it seemed. After that 4.2, you get a whole bunch of bigger earthquakes, 3.7, 3.2, 3.2, 3.7, 3.7. And that's that magma that had been in that summit area that had filled for a while, working its way to the summit surface and erupting as that fissure. So most of the breaking had happened already, and that's why not as many earthquakes. But you still see adjustments happening underground, and we're still seeing earthquakes happening here. And it's interesting to see that the red ones are in this cloud kind of in this northeast sector more so than in the southwest. So that also would seem to suggest a northeast rift dominance of this pattern here. Elsewhere, you're not seeing a lot of response. Everything else is fairly normal, and it's not really worth distracting from our Mauna Loa story and catch-up update here. If you're curious, here's what the monitoring data looks like as far as earthquake counts. The earthquakes actually drop down to a little low, and the cycle pick back up, and it looked kind of like the background again, right? Only one day of higher counts within this past week until we came back to last night. And even last night, it didn't really exceed this numbers in any amount. So there it is. The red line in here, that 4.2, that's what really shows you how much energy was released, and that's why it escalated to eruption here. So that's the 1 year, the 5-year plot. We're going to come back to that. Once again, the map of those earthquake locations, colored by depth now, red being very shallow, yellow being more intermediate, orange as well. So going down, last month, there's our tilt signal. You can see the scale is microradians up to 120, -20. So this is the magnitude we're really looking for an eruption, and Unfortunately, it happened so fast that when this thing was rising up, that's when you had your warning, and when it drops down, eruption begins. Right, so it was really very little time. We saw that the USGS didn't quite have time to issue their orange. By the time they were trying to get their orange alert out, it was already time to issue red. So that's the last week, and it's really compressed in time. The last month is even more so there. GPS is kind of showing us a long-term pattern, showing us adjustments were happening in the ground, but really the GPS at this point we'll just gloss over it, because those signals and many of the other signals we're looking at are trying to gain some understanding as far as when a volcano is going to erupt. And we're past that, it's erupting now, so it's really not as useful to dig into some of the other. We have had questions come up about the gas. We do have this tweet from NOAA satellites showing goes west, captured eruption of Mauna Loa's eruption here in National Park. Here is heat signature on the left, and the SO2 cloud that was released. So see a big puff that's yellow rising. So we can look at the interactive maps from the state of Hawaii here. This is Hawaii air quality data. Let's massage it a little bit here. Let's happy and gives us some data points. All right, so what you can see is everything is in the green now, but there are some elevated numbers around. Value for Hilo, for example, and you can see it's getting to the edge of the green there, but it's all still in the green, even if it's climbing a little bit there. So thus far, not a whole lot of VOG impact at these lower elevations where people are. However, if we look at the VOG map forecast right here from University of Hawaii, it's now been added. So we have this emission source of Kilauea, and that was putting out, I want to say 500 tons per day might have been the measurement at one point. I don't see it listed on here, but we have a new source, Mauna Loa Summit, put on a map with an input rate of 100,000 tons per day. That could just be a rough ballpark estimate just to get us on a board here. But with those values, you can see, I better zoom this out, how the VOG really is going to spread across Maui and might even get to Oahu within the next couple of days here and then beyond. And so that's where you can start having potentially more aircraft impacts, and not so much because of the ash, but the VOG itself could also be corrosive, and you might have some protocol to deal with that as well. So that's the VOG forecast there, and that's on a VOG mapping project. You can go to look up the VOG dashboard. You can Google VOG dashboard, and you can get all kinds of information, including getting access to this map, as far as what to do about VOG, how to prepare, all those things. And we're still waiting to hear reports of whether any tephra, small kind Peleus hairs or anything have been seen falling anywhere. That is a concern, but does not seem to be widespread at this time. It seems like all that fall is. So that is the summary here. Did promise I would go back and look through some questions. Maybe Dane has some that he could look at again.
Yeah, so do you want to do some questions?
Selectively, right? Because if there's anything I didn't answer in particular.
Well, I wasn't here for all of it, so I'm not exactly sure what you have or have not answered. One of the questions I'm seeing, is it common for the eruption for it to be erupting from different rift zones in a short period of time? Or would you consider this different rift zones? How does that break down?
There's still, so it's that summit threshold is somewhat arbitrary, I think, right? To call it 12,000 feet or 12,500 or 11, whatever it happens to be. And so we're seeing apparently two fissures outside of that zone on both rift zones, but unless they propagate into the rift zones further, I wouldn't necessarily call them a two rift zone eruption. I would adjust my threshold of where the summit actually is my more likely, what I would lean to do. So I would say it's rare to see that happen. If you really have two eruptions happening or two vents, one in each rift zone that are not near the summit, that would be rare. But having them near the summit is actually quite common, as I showed on the maps there. Right, you can have those fissure lines cracking from the summit down, and the fissures can be a mile or 2 or 3 long. So if that's the case, then you can easily have started above the summit threshold and then just cross down it across it as well. So yeah, we have to wait and see what comes of that. But it's really about it moving down in elevation further than that.
All right, yeah, I'm just trying to catch up on some questions. If you guys got any questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat once again. Try and get those collected. There's some questions about tephra and the aviate and the ash. Have you heard anything about the airports being affected in terms of making closures or restrictions?
No, haven't heard anything about that. So I haven't had a chance to collect all the data, so I don't really know if there's any aviation changes. We've heard rumors that the saddle might have been closed, but we haven't seen anything official on that. But as I mentioned at the top, that could happen.
Right.
So that's what we got.
All right. So do we have any idea on when we will be talking with Genhan and Mayor again?
When they ask us to.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure exactly.
There's something
right?
in the works.
But it's
all right.
They have already indicated they would like to.
Okay.
So,
all right, we will be on standby for that if they are watching.
Yeah. So that I mostly wanted to kind of catch up from start to finish and keep it a little bit more compact here. I know we still took an hour to go through all the details. There's going to be more forthcoming. We're going to talk to the mayor and USGS once again. And then we expect to have a batch of imagery coming in over the course of the day from people taking flights and from USGS and all of that. So we will come back to you guys after that with another live after our interview with USGS, Civil Defense, and Mayor Roth, and summarize imagery and kind of update you guys on that. But really, the bottom line is that the fact that it's shifted to the Northeast Rift, if that's really what's happening, and we still have to follow up on this upper Southwest Rift fissure and see what's happening there. But if it actually moves all the way into the Northeast Rift, that would be beneficial as far as giving us time to prepare, giving us a buffer zone before lava gets near people, and all of that. So on that's a little less urgent to us to track it every few minutes, let's say, moving down that northeast flank, more so than following up what's happening in the Southwest Rift. So that'll likely be our focus going forward, and talk to the USGS.
Right. Seeing talk that Southwest may have grounded their flights at this time in Hilo. So yeah, everything's still a fluid situation, and we will let you know when we know more.
Yeah, mahalo, Dane. So let's just cut it off here. We're just a little bit over an hour, and I don't want to drag it out too long, and we'll be back live once again. So whatever we forgot to say here, if your question wasn't answered, join us again later and ask it again. Thanks for your patience. We're trying to juggle a lot of stuff here. I had to stop the mic a couple times for phone calls, as you guys have heard. So we better wrap it up and gather ourselves and come back to you guys when we're ready.
All right, sounds like a plan. Nope, sounds like a plan. We will be back.
All right, so from HawaiiTracker.com, he's Dane DuPont. I'm geologist Philip Ong, and we'll see you guys likely in an hour or
a little bit,
a few hours or less than an hour. We'll see you guys shortly. Aloha, everyone.
All right.